Welcome to Sober.Coffee, a weekly coffee chat sharing experience, strength, and hope for anyone on the sober road to recovery. You can download Sober.Coffee weekly on all podcast platforms and check us out on Instagram at Sober.Coffee Podcast and on Twitter at Sober.Coffee Pod. To learn more about us and to help support these sessions, visit online at Sober.Coffee. Here are your hosts, two guys on their own path to recovery, Mike and Glenn. Let's join them at the coffee shop.
Hey there, G.
Hey, good morning, Mikey.
Glenn, thank you.
You're absolutely welcome.
I love that you carve out time of your schedule to have these coffees. They're great. They're certainly cathartic for me. I've gone through and listened to, no one likes to hear their own voice on tape, right? I feel like a Pee Wee Herman. Hello,
I do.
I am Mike. And, anyway, I act much more responsibly in public places than Pee Wee Herman. But either way, that's a topic for another show. This coffee this morning is I'm excited about. It's I'm gonna go back to the Wayback Machine, to my early days of recovery, and I want to talk about the ISM, the way that it was explained to me.
Like AlcoholISM?
ISM, yeah.
Nice.
AlcoholISM. And there's everything I'm going to share this morning, Glenn, and I certainly want your input and feedback on as I move through this process. But came from a very good friend of mine. I'll just call him John, who said he was very instrumental in my early recovery, and he sat me down at a coffee shop and told me to get a piece of paper out, 8.5 by 11, and we sketched out his view of what alcoholism was and how we live with it.
Yeah, that's great. So I did the same thing with John.
Okay.
I have a different name for him. Mm-hmm. It's Dr. John.
Okay.
So, he is, and so he's a guy in our program. He's an MD. I probably have all the initials wrong, but and he actually focused on alcohol and addiction issues, right? So, from a medical standpoint, from a brain standpoint, he's pretty dialed in, right? One would say. We've actually tried to get him on the show, but he's in the middle of moving and transitioning right now, so it's very hard from a time perspective to get him scheduled. But this was meaningful. You know?
It is. I thought it was really important to get into our sessions as part of our inventory. So as people are driving to work, driving to an event, or just taking time out to grow in their recovery, that they've got something to work with. So, for those that are stationary, grab an 8.5 by 11. For those that are driving along, I'm going to take this thing linear. Hell, help me out with the word.
Dude, I'm not sure if I could say that.
All right.
Literally?
Thank you. Yeah, not literally. Linearly.
In a linear fashion.
Yes, in a linear fashion. So, ISM, So sketched on the top left of the sheet is the word ISM, ISM. I think he pointed out to me that you could just say it's inside myself, ISM, inside myself. And
it's an inside job.
It's an inside job, absolutely. And what it is, you could pick a metaphor, according to John. You're born with it. It's something within you. You can call it born scared, or a spiritual dis-ease, or yearning for wholeness, or a thirst for God, or a basic human condition, or God's finger poking at you, or this is the one that I'll hold on to, a hole in the soul.
Yeah, and I love, they are great metaphors. Probably the one that I love the best is a hole in the soul. Mm-hmm. I mean, I can identify with that one.
That's right.
It's funny going through all my programs, all the doctors I went to, and all the therapy sessions I went to, everybody. In fact, at one point I had, a panel of 10 PhDs and sat there and said, we're going to figure out why you drink, And I spent so much time on that, and still today I don't really know.
Right.
And I got to the point where, it really doesn't matter.
Right. Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I just, I never, maybe it was because I was adopted and because I didn't feel like I was wanted and I always had to prove myself and try to be wanted and accepted. I don't know.
I don't know either.
It doesn't matter anymore.
Interesting, though, that we were both adopted, and so
you were too?
Yeah,
I forgot that.
Yeah, so therefore, there's that maternal
hole in the soul.
Yeah, that maternal hole in the soul. What was he like? What Yeah. So I agree with John on this point. Is that at least people I've run into and run across in my 62 years, a lot of people are groping for something. They're grasping for to fill some area in their life that they feel is underfilled.
Maybe it's their purpose. Maybe they're grasping for their purpose and what am I about and what should I don't know.
Well, you're getting to the end of the story there because
I skip to the end?
No, not at all. But I think it's a really interesting point. The word purpose isn't in my notes at all. But yes, I think that does. When we come right back down to this, when we come back up to this quadrant after our journey, yes, purpose does help fill that hole in the soul. But let's talk about what happens, at least what happened for me, and that's what this chart is so reflective of my life. Over on the right-hand side, the movies, so you've got this hole in the soul, and then you try and fill this hole in the soul with, let's call them false gods, right? Mm-hmm. So it could be booze, it could be drugs, food, sex, work, money, etc., right? It could be
false gods are also known as phony fillers.
Phony fillers.
I love that.
Yeah, right? So we're trying to fill it with something. And for me, alcohol worked, drugs worked. Well, alcohol worked until it didn't work. Drugs worked until they didn't work. Money worked until it didn't work. I mean, I look at these, I don't think that, for my story anyway, is that it wasn't just one of these things trying to fill this hole. I was throwing anything at it that I possibly could.
Yeah, and one of the things that Dr. John says is so true is, many of these phony fillers are really applauded by sobriety.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Like, okay, if somebody overeats and weighs 600 pounds, there's not a lot of applause there, right? Mm-hmm. But, a workaholic, right? That's really a phony, or can be a phony filler.
Sure.
But people applaud that.
Oh, society loves that.
Look at Mike.
That
Mike's
achiever.
aggressive. Look at that. Look at how purposeful. He's aggressive.
Yeah.
Or money, right?
Yep.
Our society, our culture, applauds money. If you have a lot of money, oh, that's great. Nice job. Hey, that's great.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, that's filling that hole in the soul.
That's right. It's
falsely.
You look at people in the world that have achieved according to the world's standards, and if you really had an opportunity to sit down and have an honest cup of coffee with them, you'd find out that things aren't as they appear. And I'm not saying in all cases. I think that there are a lot of instances where people have found this purpose you talk about, or have found a healthy way to deal with this. So, but moving ahead, we do have these false gods that try, and they do. All of them have these three common threads. They work. We do find temporary relief. They do fill the void. They do become our coping skills, but inevitably, they are a disillusionment, right? I mean, we're ultimately disillusioned by them. I mean, because they're just not doing their job anymore.
Yeah, I think it takes the focus off of what the underlying issue is.
Sure, right, absolutely.
It just covers it up, it masks it,
That's right. So let's take the path of alcohol, right? So, this was the object of my addiction, right? Was the alcohol. That was my go-to. So I continue to go towards that, and it brings me into two scenarios. It brings me, the first one is, what the alcohol does for me, right? So for me, it relieves me from self, right? It takes it off target. help me out, Glenn.
Yeah, so I would use the word escape.
Okay.
Right. So if I'm in a situation and I'm not liking me, right, and that, let's set the ism, right? It's inside of me. It's something not right. It's the born scared. It's the hole in the soul. It's spiritual disease, whichever word you want to use. But when it's in the middle of happening, right? I used to use alcohol to escape that.
Right.
And I'm like, I can't deal with it. Don't want to deal with it. Not sure what's going on. I'm just going to have some booze, and hey, in about 20 minutes, nothing will matter anymore. That's
right. So that was the word I was hunting for there. You didn't say it, but it jumped back into my head, and it soothes my ism.
Yep.
It doesn't fix it. It just soothes my ism. And I'm sure that there's some medical definition. Maybe sometime we'll have a medical guy on here that can talk about things like the limbic system. And
I've got one, man.
You got a guy?
Dr. Kevin McCauley.
Guy or a gal? Yeah.
Dr. Kevin McCauley. He is the champion.
Yeah, let's get him on.
Yep.
Right. So, but we're not going to talk about brain science right now. But so these are things that alcohol did for me, but I hated what it did to me, right? Because it impaired my judgment. There was painful consequences. Look, I just act badly, So what it was doing for me, I had equal amounts of what it did to me, which was all negative. So what it did for me in a positive way was affecting me negatively because what it did to me. It impaired my judgment, really, and I just acted badly. So eventually, the pain of what it did to me outweighed the pain of the relief of what it did for me. And so this is where we kind of talk about a bottom, right?
Yeah, so I love how you say that, right? Because alcohol did a lot for me, right? So for me, the consequences, when I think of consequences, especially, of drinking, they can be mild consequences. All the way to disastrous ones.
Sure.
And then shortly beyond that to death.
Yeah,
right? So for me, and it just clicked, alcohol did so much for me.
Oh, yeah.
That the consequences had to be immense to finally overcome that.
That's right. Yep.
To outbalance that.
And so you end up at a place that you've either had enough pain, you're sick and tired, check, or you're making payments to the court, right? Check.
Right. Amen, man.
Or seeing a physician who's telling you that you are on a fast track to death,
right?
So we say enough, right? I mean, look, that's easy. It's like, okay, well, I guess I got to fix this drug problem, right? Because I'm certainly in the wrong place, so I guess I got to fix it.
Yeah, and you just said that so casually, and for me, it was very critical. It was September 2014, and my way of saying enough. And I'm sitting on my counselor's floor after, a 1 week relapse, 6 hospitals in 1 week across the country, starting in Palm Springs, and 8-day detox. So that's 2 weeks of hell. And I'm sitting on my counselor's floor on a Friday afternoon. I can't even sit in a chair, and I look at him, and my enough was I looked at him. I said, dude, I will do. It was my point of surrender. I said, dude, I will do anything you tell me to do. I just can't take another drink. I was sick and tired. I was everything that you just described.
Right.
I was. And that's what came out of my mouth. And damn it, I meant it.
Yeah.
And I still mean it today.
And that I just want to underline that and put an exclamation point on it. It for me, mine was October 13th, 2018. And I stumbled, I got out of bed at about 4:45 in the morning and stumbled across the hall, grabbed a bottle out of a brown paper bag, took 5 big guzzles, stumbled across the hall to the bathroom, puked that up, went back into the bathroom, took 5 more guzzles, made my way down the hall, and sat at the table and said, "Is this what life has become? I give up. I don't want this life anymore."
That's awesome, man.
So, I think for both our stories, there was shame and guilt and self-loathing, financial hardships, mental health issues, damaged relationships, or a combination of all that. But we were left at this crossroad, and we really had 3 choices left, right? We could either get drunk or high again, okay, starting the cycle all over
Check.
again.
I did that a ton.
Right, which inevitably would return us right back to this point, which, by the way, I can do alone. I can get drunk alone.
Totally.
Okay? Or we
In fact, you prefer to do it alone.
yeah, right. Or we could go dry, right, which is painful and miserable, right? That's just not drinking, not opening the bottle, the top of the pill bottle, right? But again, I could do this alone, but it's the painful way to go. Or number 3, get sober through a 12-step program, which is simply seeking a better way to live, which, by the way, I need others to accomplish, right? So that's the point where we find ourselves. Because I found myself there, I didn't want to go back to where I was, and I had that same deep desire that you described so eloquently in your counselor's office. I had that same life point where I said, enough, no mas, no more.
Yeah, so I like the point you said about go dry, right? Painful and miserable.
Right.
I can do this without AA, or I can do this alone,
Sure.
or I'll fix this, or my favorite line, I've got this. Right?
I got it.
I did that many times. In fact, at one point, I was sober for 5 months. I don't want to use the word sober. I didn't drink for 5 months.
You were dry.
I was dry. And I had a lot of good things going on in my life from a career standpoint. And, but I mean, I was miserable. I mean, that ism was certainly there for me. I didn't have a solution, right? Booze was my solution, and I didn't have my solution anymore. So it was super painful, and as I look back, I mean, that was only part of the issue. So one was getting through things without having a drink, but secondly, in sobriety, I have learned factually how much better things can be if I change some areas of my life and live a different way.
Right.
Right. So it's not just, there's a guy, in fact, it's the same, Dr. John, he goes, pain's the only motivator. And I agree, pain is an absolute motivator, but it's not the only one. Greed can be an awesome motivator also. And there was a period of time in this program, I worked the 12 steps so that I wouldn't take that next drink, right? And I kept showing up because I didn't want to relapse. But then somewhere along the way, maybe the 2-year mark, I don't know, I should have taken notes, but I kept coming back, not to avoid pain, because I wanted more of the great stuff that I was getting. And today, I come and committed to doing this every single day. 90% of it, so I continue to grow and continue to get great stuff happen in my life. Maybe 10% of it, so I don't relapse, right? But I really do it focusing on what's great and growth.
Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And so back to where we're sitting. We're sitting with 3 choices, right? So either get drunk or high again, right? Go dry or get sober, right? And But make no mistake that we're going to find ourselves back up at the top page. We're going to find ourselves, even in sobriety, we're going to find ourselves back with this ism. It doesn't just magically go away. There's still an ism. There's still a hole in the soul that needs to be filled. There is still a thirst or a wanting for more. But what I just heard you say is that the things that you're wanting to fill that with are now positive, healthy, helpful. And that's the real miracle of the program, the real beauty of the program. And I think that once we find ourselves back confronted with that ism again, right, which we inevitably will be, right, that we have 3 choices. This is my last list of 3. Either embrace it, okay, learn to suffer better, right, which may be one and the same, or walk afresh, embarking on a lifelong journey of transformation. Right, so that's kind of where you're at. Am I willing to go through a little bit of, I personally, yes, I'm suffering better. I don't like that as an option because I'm positive by nature. That sounds has a negative connotation to it. Oh, I suffer better. I like to say, I'm gonna grow through pain. I'm okay with that. Things are going to happen. People are going to die. I'm going to stumble. My perfect program is going to fail me today. One of the wheels is going to come off, and I'm not going to be practicing step 1, 2, 3, or 6. I don't know what the deal is, but we are going to find ourselves there. I think the quest is to and the conclusion for me is to understand that we're always going to have this ism. It's going to be part of us until the day we die. But I think there are things that we can do, and we've done multiple sessions on spirituality in the program. You know, you could tap into that as one of the things to fill that hole in the soul.
Yeah, you know, dealing with the hole in the soul, and I love how you capsulize that. You know, my whole life, you know, and I'm going to put like 4 thoughts together here. They probably won't make sense. But, you know, I read a recent book, you know, last year or so, by Dr. Scott Peck, and it's The Road Less Traveled.
Yeah, great book.
And I remember pulling up that book, and I bought it. And I said, okay, I hear people talk about it. I'll buy it. I bought it. So I sit down in my chair, and I got my coffee, and I'm ready to read the book. I open it up, and the first page, one of the first lines, in fact, the first line is, "Life is difficult." I'm like, this is bullshit. I don't want to read this. And I can remember I never made it past that first page. I closed the book. I threw it on my bookshelf. And I'm like, I'm not reading that crap.
Right.
You know, because something in my head said life is supposed to be easy. And you know, maybe that was a year and a half ago. And I've learned so much since then. And one of the keys I've learned is to suffer better. And through my... I remember 7 years ago now in my little 4-month program, you know, the counselor, the same guy I surrendered to, you know, it was an afternoon, beautiful sky here in Chicago, nice fall. And he told me to sit in this plastic chair for 3 hours. No phone, no outside, just sit. And I was going out of my mind. I mean, just the pain that was going inside my mind. And that's when I think of suffering better. Mm-hmm. I've learned to sit through situations, mm-hmm. right? I've learned to sit in the chair and just get through it. But I've also learned, and I was just recently, you know, a couple days, you know, I took, a couple days to reflect, and I read this book by this Navy SEAL David Goggins called "You Can't Hurt Me" or something like that, and he's like, who says life's supposed to be easy and comfortable? In fact, and my real takeaway from that is it's in the challenges, it's in the pain where you really start to grow.
Right.
Right? So, good. Hey, I'm not a pain enthusiast, mm-hmm. but when I go through pain or go through challenges or go through, even worse, just periods of being uncomfortable, mm-hmm. you know, I recognize that. I'm saying, hey, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. I'm super aware. I'm okay. I'm going to get through this. I've gotten through all of this kind of stuff before. This is okay. And I just suffer through it. And as I look back on those situations, they are periods of growth for me and really driving strong, valuable benefit.
I love it, Glenn. I love it. You know, here's the thing. So I admit this morning.
Bring us home, man.
That I'm full of it.
Yeah, you are full of it.
I'm full of it.
I've told you that for a while.
Are you ready to be full of it as well?
Yeah.
Right, Glenn. Great session. Remember, we are alcoholics, and we will always have that ism. So, embrace it.
Yep, love it, man.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, Mikey.
All right, talk to you.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us for today's coffee chat. To contact the show, email us at podcast@Sober.Coffee. If you need immediate help, the AA hotline is 800-839-1686. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is 800-273-8255. Remember, Mike and Glenn are sharing their own journey on the path to recovery. Any suggestions, medical or otherwise, are their own experiences and should not be viewed as professional advice. See you next week, and remember, there is a solution.